My name is Jonathan Shivers. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at Relatient. And at Relatient, we were started back in 2012. We serve about 47,000 providers here in the U.S. Wow. And our focus is to make sure that the patient experience and the provider preferences align with one another. So scheduling and communication are really the two main areas that we would focus on.
Oh, cool. Excellent. So, I mean, patient engagement, really hot topic generally at HIMSS and in the ecosystem generally. And not too often I've heard about them in that whole kind of that connection between the both that you just... I'd love to hear a little bit more about why it's important to bridge that gap.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a quick story of how Relatient was started. So about just over 10, 12 years ago, a provider, Dr. Arun Mohan, practicing in Atlanta at Emory Healthcare, was working in the hospital, and he saw a patient, and this patient had kidney disease. And if you're familiar with kidney disease, the mortality rate is not good if left untreated or treated improperly. So as soon as he saw this patient, Dr. Mohan went into the internal scheduling line at Emory, and so picked up the phone and said, "Hey, I've got this patient." And the scheduler said, "Okay, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Well, this patient needs to see a transplant nephrologist immediately." So the scheduler looked around and flipped through some binders, some notebooks, looking for the right provider, and said, "Okay, I've got that provider you're asking for, and it's going to be 6 weeks." Unfortunately, 6 weeks could be a bit too long to wait for a procedure like this. A few hours later, Dr. Mohan is down in the physician's lounge at Emory and happens to run into the nephrologist he was trying to set his patient up with. And he went up to her and said, "Hey, I've got a patient. I really need you to help me out. Your schedule is booked." And she looked at him and said, "No, actually, my schedule's open. Something's been going on with my scheduling. They keep saying it's booked, but it's not. I'll see him first thing tomorrow." So you see that from the scheduling side of our providers really is their schedule being filled properly, and is that being relayed to patients? Now, let's look on the other side. Dr. Mohan has a friend he went to grad school with. A few weeks later, this friend took his child to a pediatrician. They sat in the office for an hour and a half in the waiting room, went through all the toys they had, went through all the videos on repeat that they could stand, and he finally called Arun and said, "There's got to be a better way that we can make sure that patients get scheduled more accurately." So Arun aligned those two thoughts, the supply and demand of what providers have on their schedules with how patients want to be seen. And that is how Central-Self by Relatient got started.
Oh, interesting. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so obviously it's, you mentioned before, I think you said 47,000 providers?
You got it.
Yeah. And so well established in the ecosystem. But coming to HIMSS, what are the types of conversations you're having with, again, those providers, but also just generally the digital health ecosystem?
Yeah. I think what comes up most often is while we're here talking with our partners, talking with our practices, our actual, providers that are here, is they want to know how can they meet their patients where their patients are. What they mean is, typically, someone picks up the phone and sits on hold when they call their doctor's office to make an appointment.
Yeah.
There are very few industries where that still exists today. I have an easier time scheduling my haircut on an app than I do seeing some providers. That shouldn't happen with the resources that we have in healthcare.
Yeah.
So one is, are you just using a patient portal? Is that how you think you're getting your patients to schedule and communicate with your providers? If so, tough luck, because even the best practices are seeing an efficiency of only 30%. That's leaving 70% of their patients without a way to connect. So what we're doing is digitizing that. So no more sitting on the phone if you're a patient on hold. No more doing emails back and forth.
Yeah.
You go straight to your provider site, use our self-scheduling in that provider site, no username, no password, nothing to log in or remember, and you book your appointment right there based on your provider's preferences. So you're aligning what the provider wants to see at what date, at what location, for what type of care, and showing that availability to each patient who meets that criteria.
I mean, it sounds like it's really important for you to understand what the healthcare providers' requirements are and building solutions that are tailored to their requirements at scale. But I'm going to hazard a guess that having good partnerships on the technology side is going to be super important as well, given that the plethora of systems that are used, and you're going to have to speak to different parts because to get that information, obviously there's got to be the connections on the other side. Is that an important part to the strategy as well?
I would say it is crucial to the strategy. So good. Your assumption is correct. So at Relatient, we partner with over 80 practice management systems we can integrate with. From the large ones that, you can't walk around the HIMSS floor without seeing everywhere, to the smaller ones who are maybe in more niche markets or maybe, more specialty specific. They all have different scheduling needs and requirements. Some of their systems do a very good job scheduling. Most of them don't, because that's not what an EHR was built for. In fact, we had a press release go out just a few weeks ago, and practices that are using Relatient for their scheduling versus their EHR and PM system for scheduling are seeing a 70% decrease in no-shows when they're using Relatient versus using their EHR or PM system for scheduling.
70%.
It's a big number, and that's why the integration you spoke to is so important. Is we have to be able to get that API data back and forth flowing in real time, so that when a schedule is put on hold, it instantly can update the schedule in the practice management system, so no one else can grab that slot.
Yeah, I've got a bit of experience with integrating practice management systems into other solutions back in Australia, and it's kind of not an easy thing to do. It's kind of like you can't just take the API key out of one and copy paste it into this one and say, this is how it works, right? So, given the 80-something systems that you do integrate in with, how do you then prioritize and, walk me through that thought process around that strategy of partnering with all these different solutions, because then you've got to ensure that they're all up to date, and there's a lot of investment in just keeping that clean, so that on the front end, for a clinician's perspective, it's all seamless. So a lot of work happening behind the scenes, I imagine.
It is, and behind the scenes, we are very blessed to have an interop team and a leader of our interop team who has done this for practice management systems for years.
Yeah.
So we have a bit of a head start there, because he knows the ins and outs of how do these practice management systems prioritize their API development. For us, we would love for it to be all APIs for every system. Yeah. Unfortunately, not every EHR is there yet. So we have to be flexible and use HL7 feeds, sometimes go directly to the database, sometimes get creative and have these larger organizations build files with us and send them through an SFTP process.
Yeah.
So it really is, there's not one silver bullet yet. Maybe we'll get there one day, but as an industry, you've got to be able to hit it from all those different angles to meet the providers where they are, just like the providers are trying to meet the patients where they are.
Yeah. No, I got you. And so here at HIMSS, we've touched on a little bit about the discussions that you're having, but from a Relatient point of view, are there any announcements or key discussions you're having that you'll be taking back to the team as well?
Yeah, I think a couple. I think something that we've seen here at HIMSS would be there are a lot of discussions going on about how do you change your model as a practice to better serve patients, because healthcare is consumer driven. It is. And that's really what we're hearing the most of this week is, all right, here's our process today. How can we make it easier for our patients to get access? Like putting a chatbot on our website, how much is that going to help? Allowing a patient to make a payment from their mobile device by text message, how much will that help? I think about other industries that completely change their models to meet their users. Even if you think of like in the fast food industry, okay? Fast food, you think of a company like Chick-fil-A. Well, 10 years ago, Chick-fil-A was making over 50% of its revenue by people coming in the restaurants and sitting down.
Yeah.
And less than that through drive-through. If you go by a Chick-fil-A today anywhere in the United States, you'll see there's cars wrapped around the building because Chick-fil-A realized the model is moving to our customers wanting convenience. just like we should give them in healthcare. Our customers want easier access, just like we need to give them in healthcare. They don't want to sit in a waiting room. They don't want to sit on hold. They don't want to sit in a restaurant when they can just quickly put their order in online, drive in, drive out and get it. So Chick-fil-A redid their model. Now, 75% of their revenue is coming through their drive-through, and only 25% is coming from in-store sales. And they've had to rebuild their buildings. They've had to change their hiring models. They've had to adapt new technology. And that's where, we're hearing conversations now of help my practice be more client-focused. Yeah. That's how we're going to continue to grow.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Firstly, we don't have Chick-fil-A in Australia, but that's okay. We've seen enough TV shows to know what it is. Maybe that's the vision, maybe. Yeah. But where I was going with that is that I can hear the digital health enthusiasts that say, well, healthcare is not fast food. Just like if your Chick-fil-A order was compromised and then was released out on the dark web, that's kind of like neither here nor there. But then if your genetic information within your healthcare system is released, it's kind of out there for good. So, which is what we lean on a lot in healthcare and saying, well, we can't, go heavy into, those types of fast-moving, different innovations because healthcare is just different. Where do you sit on that scale of like needing to do things differently in healthcare to meet consumers where they want to go, versus that kind of balance of, well, hey, we're in the business of looking after patients and sensitive information. Yeah,
that's a great point, and I love that you used the word balance. You said where on the scale, and then you said balance, and I think it is a balance. Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we have to look at this as what do the patients need? Where do we meet patients? How do we meet patients where they are at? If we are opening those doors for patients to make it as easy as possible for them to schedule an appointment, to communicate with their providers, to make a payment, then we've done what we set out to do. Yeah. So that's really the lens that we look at it.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I like that. And so lastly then, Relatient, what does the roadmap look like, or what can we look forward to seeing over the next 6, 12, 24?
Yeah. I think we will continue to integrate platforms so that all of our solutions can be on one centralized platform, continue to expand so that, practices don't have to use different vendors for different types of patient outreach. That's one piece. The second piece is we have developed our own APIs, and we are opening those up to other third parties. So other vendors that do patient communications, think of call center vendors. They will have access to our solutions through our APIs so that they can then push them out to their network. So again, the goal, make it as easy for the end users to get the care that they're looking for.